Today, we're going to dig deep into a topic that most of us can relate to: why communication is so hard in relationships. You know that moment when you're trying to explain how you feel, but it just seems like the other person isn't getting it, or when you say something, and it comes out all wrong, causing more tension. It happens to the best of us, and there's some fascinating psychology behind it. In this video, we'll explore why we sometimes struggle to communicate effectively with our partners and what's going on in our minds that makes it so difficult. By the end of this video, you'll understand more about what's happening on a psychological level and how to overcome some of those communication barriers. Let's dive right in. One of the biggest reasons communication breaks down in relationships is because of emotions. When you're in a relationship, emotions run high. When emotions like anger, frustration, or sadness get involved, they can hijack the brain's rational thinking center. Here's the thing: when we feel emotionally charged, the part of our brain called the amygdala takes over. The amygdala is responsible for our fight or flight response, and it kicks into gear when we perceive a threat. So, if you're feeling attacked during an argument, your brain responds the same way it would if you were in actual danger. This is why we tend to say things we don't mean, raise our voices, or completely shut down when we're overwhelmed. Our brains are in defense mode, making it almost impossible to communicate clearly. Another reason communication can be so hard in relationships is that we often misinterpret each other's intentions. When you've been with someone for a while, it's easy to assume you know what they're thinking or feeling. But assumptions can be dangerous, especially when you're upset. Here's how it works: when someone says something that triggers an emotional reaction in us, our brains fill in the gaps with assumptions about their intentions. We might think, they're saying that to hurt me, or they don't care about how I feel. The psychology behind this is that our brains are always looking for patterns, even when there aren't any. This is called negative bias, and it's hardwired into our brains to help us avoid danger. The downside: communication in relationships often requires us to be vulnerable, which can be terrifying. Opening up about your deepest feelings, insecurities, or fears means putting yourself in a position where you could get hurt. And let's face it, no one likes feeling vulnerable. Psychologically speaking, the fear of vulnerability is tied to our sense of self-worth. You might avoid difficult conversations, sweep problems under the rug, or shut down when things get too intense. But here's the problem: avoiding vulnerability creates distance between you and your partner. Being vulnerable takes courage, but it's essential for building trust and emotional intimacy in a relationship. Without it, communication can become surface level, and deeper issues never get resolved. Another big factor that complicates communication is that people have different communication styles. Some people are more direct, while others are more passive. Some people express themselves through actions, while others need verbal reassurance. When two people with different communication styles come together, it can lead to confusion. For example, someone who is more direct might say, "I need more attention from you," while someone who's less direct might hint at their needs by saying, "We haven't spent much time together lately." If the other person doesn't pick up on that hint, frustration can build. It's not that one style is better than the other, but understanding and adapting to each other's styles is key to improving communication. One thing that's common in many relationships is the pursuer-distancer dynamic. In this dynamic, one partner seeks more emotional closeness, while the other needs more space. The pursuer often feels neglected and tries to push for more communication, while the distancer feels overwhelmed and shuts down. This creates a cycle that's hard to break without understanding each other's needs. We all have certain expectations of how our partner should behave or respond. When those expectations aren't met, we feel disappointed or frustrated. The issue is that a lot of these expectations are unspoken. You might expect your partner to understand how you're feeling without having to say anything. But as much as we'd like them to, our partners aren't mind readers. Unspoken expectations can lead to misunderstandings and resentment. It's important to communicate your expectations clearly, rather than assuming your partner knows what you want. This takes practice, but once both people in the relationship start expressing their needs openly, communication tends to improve. In relationships, it's easy to fall into the trap of blaming the other person when things go wrong. When you feel hurt or upset, pointing the finger at your partner might seem like the easiest way to handle the situation. But blaming others shuts down communication and creates defensiveness. Psychologically, when we blame someone else, we're avoiding our own responsibility in the situation. It's easier to say, "You made me feel this way," than to take a step back and say, "This is how I'm feeling, and this is why." Owning your emotions and avoiding blame opens up the conversation and allows both people to express themselves without feeling attacked. Instead of using blame, try using I statements. For example, say, "I feel hurt when this happens," instead of, "You always make me feel hurt." This simple shift in language can make a big difference in how the other person responds. Lastly, one of the most common reasons communication breaks down in relationships is because we don't listen effectively. There's a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is passive, it's just the act of receiving sound. But listening is active, it involves understanding, processing, and empathizing with what the other person is saying. This can lead to conversations where both people feel unheard. Active listening means giving your full attention to the other person, putting yourself in their shoes, and responding thoughtfully. It's not easy, but it's a skill that can dramatically improve communication. So, there you have it, the psychology behind why communication can be so challenging in relationships. But the good news is, with some awareness and effort, you can start breaking down these barriers. Remember, communication is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. The more you work on understanding yourself and your partner, the easier it becomes to communicate openly and effectively. If you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to Wondrous Psychology 3.0 for more insights into human behavior and relationships. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.